You are listening to the Enterpriser Podcast, sponsored by the Fusion Group. We're joined today by Deborah Driggs. Deborah has led what I would call a legendary career, starting out as a Playboy centerfold and Covergirl model. She spent a lifetime as a Screen Actors Guild member, has had a hugely successful sales career, and has overcome many hurdles and has helped others overcome them as well, including in addiction and recovery, and is now an entrepreneur, wellness coach, and a mentor, and will be releasing her first book soon. So thank you very much for joining us today, Deborah. We are honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the beautiful introduction.
No problem. So tell me, how are you living? Let's talk about what's happening in your sphere.
How am I living?
Yeah.
I'm living day by day in a beautiful state, with lots of gratitude. Honestly, it was my post today on social media as, what are you grateful for? Because for me, starting out every morning with just that practice really can lead my day into a beautiful direction. And I have a new thing that I do now when I wake up. I don't shut my, it used to be, you shut everything and you sleep in the pitch dark, but I don't do that anymore. I kind of let I like to wake up now to the sunrise, and I can hear the birds. And so the first things out of my mouth are thank you, thank you, thank you, and I don't know what that does. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that could explain it better, but for me, it already sets something in motion that heads me into there's so much to be so grateful for. And even if it's just I woke up and I get to hear the birds, it changes your whole perspective. And believe me, it didn't used to be that way. My story was far from living in that kind of serene, quiet gratitude, happiness. I was far from that. I was in a chaotic mode most of the time. And so it's really nice. I feel really, really like in a special place now in my life where I get to have that. I get to be around chaos and not be a part of it. And that's a big shift.
Yeah, I have, it's funny that you say that actually, practicing gratitude. It's part of quite a few different recovery programs. I'm part of the 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous recovery program, and that's something that's talked about quite often, is doing your gratitude in the morning and gratitude at night. And I've been doing it for quite a while now, and I do find it makes a massive difference in your perspective of the day when you wake up, being grateful and allowing me to achieve serenity, which is really, to me, is like I really wouldn't trade my serenity that I have now for anything. Serenity is probably one of the most important things in my life now.
Yeah, it's very true. And I'm, as you've read, I'm also in recovery, and, so that's why I said I spent most of my life in a very chaotic state, searching for the next thing to fill me up, whether it was alcohol, attention, shopping, relationships, codependency, whatever it was, I was always on the run, really. Just, I had my running shoes nearby, and I was on to the next chaotic thing. And at some point, you got to take your shoes off, you got to take off the running shoes and face the facts that it isn't working anymore. And that's the beautiful thing about the 12-step program. And not that I, want to get too much into that, but what's beautiful about it is that it really does give such beautiful life tools, things that I never even looked at. I wasn't even a thought in my mind to look at certain things a certain way until I really got into recovery, and I will be eternally grateful, because it really gave me a different way of living, a different life.
Yeah, there's lots of different programs, and you know, I've experienced with some and others, but I think that what they all do is they all lead to that what you had brought up, which was serenity. And as long as we can achieve that serenity, I think that we're living better. And you know, like you said, that gratitude is a big part of it. I know that you have a book coming out soon. What's up with that? What's it about? When's it coming out? Can you tell me?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first book I have coming out, which will be the launch, is coming up. It's July 7th. And
Oh,
for
wow.
the first 24 to 48 hours, it'll be on sale for $1.99. We're doing this huge launch.
Yeah.
It's a book that's called Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah.
I am a guest author. I am collaborating with some beautiful women,
Mm-hmm.
and we've each written a chapter. And from my perspective, it's about overcoming something and getting back into the light, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we go through these dark times in our life. And I think the question people want to know is, how'd you come out of it? You know,
Yeah.
what did you do? What were
Mm-hmm.
the tools that you used? And so my chapter is called Surrender to Win. That's all I'll say for right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, that'll launch on July 7th. And I'm really, really proud of that. And I'm also just so grateful to be amongst some amazing women. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I just feel, you know, I'm kind of the new author in the group, you
Yeah.
know, so I'm a newbie, and they're all, some of them are, you know, are published authors. So this will be my first time as a published author, and I'm guesting in this book. And you can also look at this book as kind of, if I were to categorize it, I would say it's very similar to Chicken for the Soul,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know, where you just get all these amazing gems and little wisdoms that you can use in your daily life. So that's what the book is really geared for. And then in October, I have a book coming out, and that is a historical fiction
Mm-hmm.
that my grandfather wrote. Unfortunately, while he was alive, he was not able to get an agent or get it published. They had, you know, shopped it around to many uh, literary houses and
Mm-hmm.
publishers, and it just kept getting rejected. And so in 2017, I took the time to actually read through all this. You know, they did this, he wrote it in the 80s, so it was all typed
Mm-hmm.
and very small typed, you know.
Wow.
And so
That's phenomenal.
it took me probably 3 to 4 months just to even put the thing in order,
Yeah. Yeah.
to have it make sense. And then I sent it to a writer and had her kind of look at it and see if it was making sense to her. And then from there, I formed a publishing company called Crystal Woods Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And from there now, you know, we're getting the book published, and it's going to be published in October. And so far, it's had a really, really beautiful response. It's a historical fiction based loosely on my grandfather's life.
Okay.
So, what was really, really great for me is that I got to read something about my grandfather that a lot of it I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't know his whole story. And that really kind of set me on a journey of not only finding out more about his life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I spent a year online just doing tons of research, but then I thought, well, that's just one grandparent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what if I really took the time to find out more about all my, you know, my grandparents and where they came from and what their backgrounds are and how they grew up. And so I became really intrigued with that. And I also felt very strongly that I wanted to get the message out
Mm-hmm.
to people to say, you know, write your story, you know, leave it behind. It's really important, because for me, reading this story in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
years after he wrote it,
Mm-hmm.
was so helpful to understand my family, to understand how my mother was brought up, to understand the trauma that he went through. And it really shed a lot of light on a lot of things that I was always curious about. So then that became kind of a little mission for me to put that message out to people. To it's real important that people know where they came from. I also believe in energy and trauma energy. And, I think that without knowing it, it's in our nervous system, and we share that history in our blood and in our genes, and it just kind of gets passed on without us even knowing it. So a lot of this stuff that I read about, I was like, wow, that's in my nervous system without me even knowing it. Stuff that he went through.
Yeah.
I experience energetically. Yeah. And so that intrigues me. So then I went on a whole journey on learning about that.
And it's an incredible concept too. I've read quite a bit about it, about how our family's experiences translate into cell memory and how those things get passed through generations. It's an incredible concept.
It's an incredible topic. It's an incredible subject, and so I'm fascinated by it. And because of that, I started doing research about that. And so it's kind of like, you have a puzzle, and I actually really like doing puzzles. So you start putting these pieces together, and it starts to make sense a little bit. And then what's really cool is, Tony Robbins always says, change your story, change your life.
Yeah.
and that's kind of how it was for me, just by doing this project and putting this puzzle together. It was like I got to change my story a little bit, and that was kind of cool, because I think at any given time in our life, we can wake up and say, you know what? That's not who I am anymore.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I say this all the time because, how people talk about me, about my past or whatever the judgment is, I go, that's like going into a house that burned down, there's nothing there. I don't live in that house anymore. Mm-hmm. So, we're all able to rebuild ourselves one day at a time. Absolutely. And it doesn't happen overnight. And, it took me years. So, I'm 58, and all my lessons came really hard at age 40 for me. It started in my 40s and led me to where I am now. So this was quite a journey for me.
Right. And so that kind of led into the formulation of the coaching and mentor business, which I'm really intrigued with. And I wanted to kind of talk about what the way that you position, your unique selling proposition, how your business differentiates from most wellness coaches. I was hoping you could kind of give me some more insight into that. I mean, I've got a pretty good idea because I was on your website, but for people who are listening, can you tell us more about Deborah's Den?
Absolutely. Yeah. Deb's Den was created at 2:00 in the morning. I woke up because I'm insomnia. I just suffer with insomnia like crazy. And so that's kind of one of the things that I always have to practice. Like, okay, I'm awake. What now? And I try really hard not to take anything from the neck up anymore. I used to always take something to help me sleep. And I try really, like that's one of those things that I just tried it, nothing from the neck up. Yeah. And so instead I woke up and I remember this was October of 2020. I spent a week working on some trauma, and I flew to Tennessee to a place called Onsite. And they have this week that you work on extreme trauma. And it was recommended to me to do this week. And so I did. And it was intense. I mean, it was like stuff, I was remembering stuff that was just not fun to remember, but it was good because I got it out. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing that plant medicine journeys can be like that, where you purge things out, Yeah. So that's what it was like. It was like this big purge. And so what happened though was after the week, it was 5 or 6 days. At the end of the week, I asked the coaches there, for some recommendations, like what can I do to continue on this journey? Mm-hmm. Because I have my 12-step programs, I have certain things, I have some mentors, but I want to continue on this journey of trauma. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, there were a couple of suggestions, but nothing really congruent. And so I left, and, I kept doing what I do. And I woke up I was going to start this program. I'm sure you've heard of it, called 75 Hard.
Yeah.
Where you work out twice a day, you drink a gallon of water, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, that's something I could do. That'd be really good for me mentally to have, because I always like to have commitments and goals and things. And so I started that program, and I got to about day 47, and I woke up at 2:00 in the morning, and I said, Deb, quit doing other people's programs, do your own program. Yeah. And I and it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I got these 2 whiteboards out, and I took photos of it, because I will never, ever, I want to have these always, because this is what I wrote. On one board, I wrote everything that I was going to remove out of my life. And on the other board, I wrote everything that I was going to add into my life for 90 days. Mm-hmm. So I called it the 90-day program, because this guy was doing a 75 hard. And what I realized all these programs have in common is that it really does take anywhere between 75 to 100 days to really break a habit and create a new one.
For very sure. Yeah.
And that's why in 12 steps, it's 90 and 90. Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest reasons, because it's helping you to create a new habit. Yeah. So I thought, well, why can't I do a 90-day program, where I do this? So I did it myself, really. I wasn't thinking that I was going to take anybody through it, or that I was going to become a coach. This was just for me to do a program that I designed that I thought would really help me with the trauma that I have experienced in my life, and this anxious feeling that I get at night when I have insomnia. And so I thought, well, let's do this. So when I tell you I removed everything, because I looked at all these other programs, and they're all great for this great, like, mental physicality workout. Mm-hmm. But I thought, what can we do for an emotional workout? And really, to get down and dirty with the emotional system, you really have to remove a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I removed traveling, shopping, dating, texting, really, social media, TV, news, anything that was going to disrupt my emotional system. And I made a list of all of it. I mean, there's lots of it. Obviously, alcohol, obviously, sleeping pills, drugs, anything that was causing a negative feeling in my life was getting removed. And then on the other board, I had way more stuff. So because I always feel like it's kind of like dieting. The reasons they don't usually work is because you're always taking something away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the whole thing with diet is the first, it's the first 3 letters is die, right? Because you're taking away, you're killing off. And so I had that kind of sense with this program. So I thought, give yourself as much as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. So on my give list, it was things like meditate, pray, journal, stretch, walk, yoga, take supplements, go to meetings, go to coaching, write every day, podcasts, create content, work on your 90-day program, work on testimonials, work on your books.
Sounds like my recovery program.
Right? Yeah. And that's exactly what it goes on and on. So, down to drink green tea, drink water every day, wake up and have water with lemon, wake up and take a probiotic, make 5 calls every day that are valuable. Mm-hmm. Then I had things that I needed to finish, so then I had a finish list. Mm-hmm. And so I had this whole thing, and anytime I would get, and by the way, when you actually do this, there were days where I was like, I can't do this. This is too brutal. I need to turn on a movie, or I need to. So then I thought about it, because, I was like, okay, Dad, you got to think this over. So I thought, okay, if I'm not going to watch TV, what can I watch? So I added documentaries. Mm-hmm. Watch documentaries that you can learn from. Yeah. And what I became obsessed with during this time was reading. All of a sudden, I started reading a book a week.
Oh
Like
my
I
goodness.
just, yeah.
My
And
new
I
guilty
don't really,
pleasure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I never, I forgot how much I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is I like to listen to the author because I like to hear the way they tell their story.
Yeah.
And so I have the book on Audible, but I also like the copy in front of me because I like to put tabs and highlight things that stick out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got on that obsession, and what a great obsession,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was the program that I created. During that time, I signed up for NLP life coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the first 2 weeks, and then I did 4 weeks, and then I kept going. I did the mastery program, and
Mm-hmm.
I had no intention of becoming a life coach. I really was doing this again to add to my repertoire, to add to my experience,
Mm-hmm.
to add to me learning and growing, because we should never stop learning and growing in any capacity. And so I thought, okay, this will be good. I'll do this. And then after I did that, I got kind of psyched about helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And I when I really started doing some real deep writing, I had realized that I actually have been helping people my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I started out as a kid. I think I was in the 6th grade, and my neighbors were asking me to tutor their kids who couldn't speak English. I lived in a very Asian neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
in Torrance growing up, and on my street, it was very predominant Asian
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, people from Korea and
Yeah.
China and Vietnam. And so they wanted their kids to learn English very quickly. And so I got hired. I had this little entrepreneurial business in the 6th grade where I literally came home with the workbooks from school, and we're teaching the kids in my neighborhood how to speak English. So when I really started putting all these pieces together, I realized, you've actually been a teacher, leader, kind of a mentor from a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
You were being of service in some capacity. And then I also realized that really did bring me a lot of, I felt good about myself when
Yep.
I was doing stuff like that. And I lost that along the way. Somewhere along the way I lost that, where I stopped being of service, and it all became about me, 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 me. And I think that's where things go downhill. When you're not really living a life of growth and contribution, things really go downhill.
Well, I mean,
And
service is
yeah,
the key to long-term recovery, isn't it? I mean, that's
yeah,
where
absolutely.
being of service
And
is
it's,
how you keep your mind healthy, and so I mean, to be able to do it in your career along with a recovery program, I mean, you know, that's
yeah, and
that's a
it kind of goes hand in hand. And I walk a very thin line too with it, because I want to make sure that I'm real careful, because I have a lot of respect for the 12-step program. So
Mhm.
there you have to be, it's just like a thin line of, like, I have to keep it separate.
Yeah.
And um, so, yeah, so I have a couple clients that I work with. I consult people, and, and we can decide together. It's not like I have all the answers. I'm not for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
I actually prefer to have a couple conversations before we even decide to work together, because I could say, "Oh, I'm not the right person for this problem," or I could say, "Oh, this is something I could really help you with." I
Mhm.
actually feel this just from the coaches and mentors that I've had in my life, that the people that have the experiences, that understand what I'm going through, have helped me the most.
Mhm.
And the ones that have absolutely no clue what it would feel like to go through a divorce and be broke with 3 kids, I
Mhm.
don't want to go to those people for advice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So there's something about, disasters become great masters,
Mhm.
because those are the people I want to go to, because I want to know, how did
Right.
you do it?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you survive that? And I'm not going to go to somebody who didn't survive that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said I'm not for everybody, because somebody might be coming to me with a problem that I would have no clue
Yeah.
how to solve. And that's why I think life coaching is very different from therapy. Therapy serves a different purpose. Life coaching for me is, I'm here to help you create your dream.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to help you create and guide you with tools that I have.
Right.
And that's the difference, between those two things. People say, well, how do you become a life coach? And I said, well, there's lots of different programs out there, but I think really what it comes down to is you being the example first of
Mm-hmm.
the life that people want, and then having those experiences that you can actually share with your clients, saying, yeah, I get it. We, it's not we can go through this together.
Right. Right.
And yeah, it's so fulfilling, as anytime you can help anybody in any little way, it's so fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, as I've progressed in my career as an entrepreneur to a point where I've had some successes and I've had way more failures than successes, but I try to use that language now. So when I'm talking to people, I immediately I ask them, how can I serve you? Like, what can I do? I have no expectations from you, but what can I do for you? Because I believe that putting that out into the world has led to some of the biggest opportunities that I've had in my life, are just simply by providing help. And maybe
Well,
sometimes.
Liam, I would give you an example right now of something that I would do if I was coaching you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have stopped you right when you said, I have way more failures than I do successes in my life. And I would have said to you, how do you know?
I tally them. I
Okay.
guess
And is that really true?
Geez, I don't know.
So it's really important. It's really important. And this is what I really want people to hear. It's really important that we really support ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say things about ourselves like, oh, I have way more failures than I do successes,
Mm-hmm.
is that really true? Because I bet you, if you wrote down all your successes and all your failures, I would bet a lot of money that that's not true. I would bet a lot of money that you're not even counting the fact that you woke up this morning. I think that sometimes we only look at the big things, and we forget about all the little successes that we have every single day.
You know what? You are right. You got me on that one. And you know what? There's my partner actually says that to me sometimes. She says, you really have to start speaking better about yourself. People say that because I don't know. There's a boundary that I cross between being humble and just being straight up wrong.
And by the way, you did not come. It's not about being humble. It's really, really acknowledging and putting in the universe. You know what? There's a lot for me to be thankful for. You don't even have to say, I'm so successful. Look at all of my success. It's more about like, there's abundance all around me. And I really tap into it whenever I can. Mm-hmm. And that just changes the whole day. It's like, that just changes the whole game right there, because language is a lot of what we do. It really is. It's a lot of what we do. And I don't, so when I'm speaking to people, I literally, like, I'm listening so intently for those little shifts, because mm-hmm. those little shifts, believe it or not, can make the biggest differences.
Right. That is true. And I imagine that comes from your neurolinguistics training.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Just something that also fascinates me. I don't have any training in it, but I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super fascinating, and that's why I continue to do it. It's kind of like, I've talked to a lot of therapists in my life, and they, to continue to be great therapists, stay in therapy. Mm-hmm. Right? because they're constantly looking at the different ways to use therapy.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with mentoring or coaching. I'm still looking for ways. I'm in this virtual coaching summit right now that I do every day because I'm constantly looking for a new perspective, a new way. There's never going to be one way to do something. It's not always going to be one way. It's not, there's so much available. And so I'm constantly searching for that new perspective. Like, oh, I wonder what that would look like if I did that. Let me try that on.
Interesting. So I wanted to ask you, because when I was looking through at your history, and I mean, it started with modeling, and then you have an incredibly successful career in sales, and then you went and you started your entrepreneurship journey. So, I mean, that's a pretty big shift. What kind of, was it an all at once sort of shift where you're just like, I want to go down the road of being, becoming a life coach, or was it something that happened over time? Like, did you have a lot of barriers to entry? Can you tell me a little bit about that, about how that change happened? Because I mean, I can, I can see it clearly.
It definitely didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
With anything in my life, it's always, when we see end results of anything, we always think, oh, look at them. They had this overnight success, but no, nothing in my life. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth, really. I mean, first of all, I didn't know anybody in the entertainment business, nobody in my life or family or friends. I didn't have any connections. So when I moved to Hollywood to be an actress and a model and all of that, everything that I did, learned, became through ups and downs, failures, successes. There were things that I did that were really great, and there were things that I did that were completely where I screwed up, So I had to learn the hard way. I didn't really have good guidance in my early career in the entertainment business. I had a lot of people blowing smoke, telling me, oh, you're going to be the next this, and you're going to do this. And it wasn't until somebody finally said, because I did book a lot of things right off the bat. I had a lot of great luck in the beginning, with commercials and modeling. I was booking things and I was working, but I really wanted to act. And I remember I went in to read for a TV show called Charles in Charge with Scotty Baio. And God, the casting director's name, I believe his name was Melvin or Marvin. Anyway, I walk in to read for the part, and it was a substantial part. It was to play his girlfriend on the show, or his new girlfriend on the show, if I can remember this correctly. This was like in 88 or 89.
Okay.
And I walk in, and and I'm always very, I was very bubbly at that age, and hi, I'm Deborah, and nice to meet you, and making that good first impression. And then he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Sure." So I pick up the sides and we start to read the scene. And I didn't even get through the third line. And he's like, "Stop, come here, sit down." And I was like, "Oh God, what'd I do?" He's like, "Girl, when you walked in this room, I would have hired you on the spot because you're exactly what I was looking for, but you have to go learn how to act." And it was the first time like somebody had kind of put me in my place a little bit. It was the first time I got some real constructive, like, go get your chops because you're not understanding this.
Yeah.
And I had read for some big things, so now I understand why they were like, yeah. Like I read for Dirty Dancing, and and it was interesting because that audition, they had an open casting call for the dance. They had all day of dancing auditions, and I made it all the way to the end of all the dancing auditions. And then they had me read for Jennifer Grey's part. I was like, "Okay, thank you very much, bye." And I was like, "Oh my God," so I kind of knew that something was off.
Yeah.
So I put myself in a 2-year acting program. And it was during that program that all of a sudden I was getting pulled in to see producers, and I was getting pulled into big casting directors. Deborah Aquila was taking notice and bringing me in to read for stuff. And she was one of the biggest casting directors back then. And I was reading for Ron Howard. And so, it was like all of a sudden I was getting pulled in to auditions, and there was hope that, okay, it was like I was going down that path. So yeah, to go from that life of not, knowing anybody and really having to learn that business, and it is a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's show business. So, but I took all of that rejection and those skills and those tools into the next part of my life, which was sales. And I also, I barely graduated high school. I didn't go to college really. And so I didn't know that I was smart, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't until I took my real estate license in 2005-ish, and I passed it the first time. And it was a really hard test to take. And I took it in Utah. So it was a little bit different in Utah there. There was a lot of math on the test. I thought I barely got through algebra in high school. Like I barely graduated high school. And I thought I'm never going to pass this test, because I didn't feel smart. And I ended up passing, and I ended up doing better on the math portion than the other portion of the test. So it was kind of funny how we can really tell our brain something and it's really not true. That's what I said. It's not true half the time. Yeah. So that was the first time in my life that I thought, oh, I can do business. I have a license and I'm really good with people. So what I did know back then is that I didn't have the money to start my own business, as most realtors will do. They'll start their own, they'll work under an umbrella of a brokerage, but they'll be their own agents, so to speak. And so what I decided to do, because I didn't have that luxury at that time, I had 3 young kids and I didn't have the luxury to start a business. I decided to work for the #1 realtor in Park City. And I met with him. We had breakfast. I met with a couple different of the top people. But I met with this one guy and we hit it off. We had breakfast and he said, well, what are you good at? And I said, well, I'm really good with people. And I said, I'm really good at networking. I'm really good at chatting people up. And, I had no call reluctance. I'd pick up the phone and call anybody. Yeah. And so he said, well, this is great news. And I was like, why? Because I really don't know anything about real estate. So why is this great news? And he said, because I have 32 listings and I'm really burned out on having to talk to these clients every single day and giving them reports and updates. So if you can take over that part of my business, we could be a really great team. I was like, oh my God, I have like it was a match made in heaven. It was like, you couldn't have written this any better. So we ended up working together until 2008 when the market crashed and I was living in Park City, Utah. So it was a second home market. The market crashed. First market to go is a ski home in a multi-million-dollar ski resort town. It was like a ghost town when the market crashed. So I had to start again. I had to okay, because now I don't have a paycheck coming in every month because we're not selling anything. Nobody wants to buy a house and nobody wants to buy the houses we have listed. And so now what do you do? So I had a bit of a nervous breakdown and had to reinvent again. And I ended up having to take a job in New York for a print procurement company. And I knew nothing about print. And so I had to trade schedules. So now my husband was the primary parent and I was the Disneyland mom. They come to see me on the holidays. And so I could go and take this job in New York because I wasn't getting the alimony child support plan, where I could just be a full-time mom. So I had to work. And so, which I'm really grateful for because I wouldn't have had any of these experience at the time. I was resentful, and I felt really gypped as far as being a mother or being a full-time mother. But I think through these lessons, my kids have learned valuable lessons through the challenges that I went through. So yeah, so I worked in New York for a year, and then as the universe would have it, we opened a company in Irvine, and my kids were living with their dad in Newport Beach, and so I transferred to be closer to my kids. It was just a God shot, it was like, what? I mean, it was just, you could, it was perfect. But then again, living in New York for a year in a new environment, meetings were a lot tougher. This was not Park City, Utah. I wasn't in Kansas anymore. Now I'm in New York with people that were like, what do you got? You got 10 minutes. Like, you better know your shit.
Their next space is 6 months from now.
They don't, and if you're late, it's over.
It's over.
This is not LA. Okay. There's no, there was traffic, or they don't care. So
next year.
So I learned some really good hardcore like business lessons doing meetings in New York. I mean, I remember I got a meeting with Ron Perlman, who's the head of Revlon.
Wow.
And I remember he literally said, you have 10 minutes. What do you got? And he had his assistant in, he put me in he didn't even let me go in his office. He put me in a room with an assistant, and he said, what do you got? What do you need? And I literally in less than 10 minutes told him. He looked at the guy and he said, set her up with so-and-so, and he walked out of the room.
That's amazing.
Now, let me tell you, you got to have a big spine to not take that personally.
Oh yeah,
like,
of course.
There's no niceties, there was no, hey Deb, thanks for coming in. Or,
no.
Nothing. It was just boom, boom, boom. And so I really learned that, this is how the real world works. And I had no idea. I had always been on the other side of stuff. So then I got back to LA, and when I got back to California, I decided to get my life insurance license on the weekends. I started studying for that test because I reconnected when I was in the print business with the company that did my life insurance, because I went to them to see if I could do their print procurement. And they said to me, why don't you get your life insurance license? And I laugh about this now, but at the time I was like, why? And they were like, you are a salesperson. Like, you should be selling life insurance. So I got my license. I thought, well, why not have a backup? Because I never wanted to be in a position ever again where I didn't have a backup. So I did both. I was doing print procurement, and then at night I was making calls, seeing if anybody wanted life insurance. And in 2012, I got my license in 2010. In 2012 and 2013, I was the number 1 agent for 2 different carriers.
Wow.
And did really, really well. And that really gave me a lot of confidence as far as I felt like I was in a more secure place in my life, but my inner life was struggling. I was still drinking. I was spinning out half the time. I was like trying to maintain the drinking, and, and when you're trying to do business and trying to maintain your emotional life, it doesn't go hand in hand. So I didn't manage that so well. It wasn't until 2017 when I finally said, enough is enough. Something's got to change. And it's so funny because I remember, and Tony will remember this. I was at a fight in Vegas. It was a big fight, 2017. And I was sitting ringside with a friend of mine. He offered to fly me in and take me to this fight. And 3 seats down was Tony Robbins and whoever he was with. I can't remember now at the time. Maybe it was Mark Cuban. And they're sitting 3 seats down. Now, I had met Tony in 1991 or 92 in Del Mar. I went to one of his first date with Destinies with my ex-husband.
Oh, wow.
And my ex-husband and him kind of became friends. my ex-husband, who's 5'9", picks up this giant on stage and swirls him around at the end of this Date with Destiny. So he remembered. So I went over and I said, I don't know if you're going to remember me, but I used to be married to, and he cut me off and he's like, of course I remember you.
That's amazing.
Well, another God shot. He says, why don't you come to one of my seminars? Email me. He tells me his email. I don't have anything to write with. He tells me his email. He goes, email me. This is my personal email, and I'd like to invite you to one of my events. I go sit in my seat. I pull out my phone. I literally composed an email sitting in that seat before the fight started, which was an amazing fight, by the way, with McGregor and whatever. I can't remember, but it was a big fight. I don't know if I'm a huge boxing fan, but it was a great fight. And so before the fight starts, I compose this email. Wow, so great running into you. I can't believe it after all these years, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to take you up on that offer of, because now I'm searching and the teachers are appearing. And I know that there's something in my life that needs to shift.
Yeah.
And so that was the first, and then I ended up going and I joined his platinum group, and then I joined his Lions group and spent a weekend at his house with the Lion group that I was in. And by the way, because I put myself in proximity of a lot of people like that, not just Tony, but all the people that are around him as well, whether it's Master Co or Joseph McClendon, Scott Harris, Keith Cunningham, Jay Abraham, all these people that are around him and his world, I have now become friends with. And I could pick up the phone and call them and say, this is what I'm doing now. And, and so, I put myself in proximity of that. But that's when the journey really started, was when I ran into Tony in 2017. And literally a lot of things started shifting. My son went back to college because I took my son with me to the first event. My son said, I'm going to go back to college. And my daughter reached out to a family member that she hadn't spoken to in 7 years. Just things started shifting, and I could feel the energy in my world changing. But I still wouldn't give up drinking. And that was the struggle, really. It took me until 2020 to really go, okay, and it's not easy for me. I know there's people that stop drinking and they go, I get it. Like they get the program. They don't ever go back. They don't ever slip. They don't ever pick up a drink again. That's unfortunately not my story. My story is, I really struggle with, I go back and forth with it. So, luckily today I'm sober, and that's how I look at it. Today I'll go to bed and I'll be sober, and I have to take it, because I look too far in the future sometimes. That can spin me out a little bit. And so if I can just keep it pulled into, it's just today.
One day at a time. One day at a time.
That's it. So so those were the shifts that really how I transitioned from all these different things. And then, it's so interesting and fascinating that, in 2021, last year, I ended up working on a movie.
Oh, wow.
And
really?
it wasn't a big part, but I got a call, and she said, would you want to play the mom? It's a small part, but and she told me what the part was. And I said, absolutely. And it turns out this movie is winning like all these film festivals, and it's doing really well. And so hopefully it's going to come out either the end of this year or next year, but it's called Neon Bleed.
Okay.
And so that was really, it was like all of a sudden now my life is coming, I'm back into my creative space, which is really cool. Super grateful to be back. Yeah.
So before I wrap up, I always ask everybody this. I want to give you the opportunity to let the folks that are going to be listening to this know what's the best way to connect with you. Is it the website, social media? What if people want to start interacting with you after they've listened to this podcast? What's the best way to do that?
Oh, definitely my website. And the reason I say that, it's my name. So it's, www.deborah.driggs.com. And the reason I say my website is the best place, because you can email me, you can text me, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. It's free. And by the way, if you sign up right now, I have a free gift. You can claim a free gift and you get to choose from a few different choices. And it's what it is. It's a little wallpaper for your phone with some inspiration. So when you wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you look at. Because awesome. I know there's people out there, the first thing they do is they pick up their phone. So I want the first thing you look at is to be something inspirational. So that's a free gift to anybody who signs up for my newsletter. The other thing I provide on my website is a resource page. Okay. So everything I read, everything I use, everything I do, everywhere I've been, the people that I think are inspirational, the music I listen to, all my resources are on my website, and those are free. Then there's the opportunity, if you want to consult with me about coaching, or if you want, in probably the end of August, I'm going to do a 90-day program, and I'll take 20 people through the program that I did. And so that's something people can sign up for in advance if they want to get in on that, because I'm only going to, it's such an intense emotional program that I can only do 20 people at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, so my website, and plus on my website are the links to all my social media, are the links to my Spotify, are the links to everything that I use, be everything. So the website is absolutely the best place to go and get connected. And I answer emails. When people email me, I answer emails. I'm not just, I'm not here to just, obviously at some point, it might become too much, but right now if people send me a message, I email them back. And my weekly newsletter, it comes out, I think every Monday or Tuesday, and you'll get the 15 tips of things that I do. You'll get, I write a weekly blog. So every week without fail, you'll get a blog of some subject that I felt called to write about. Okay. And that's where to go. And I would love to have you come and join the journey.
Awesome. And your website's a class act, by the way. I love it.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I sincerely appreciate you coming on the show today. We'll touch base as well too, because I'd love to have you up at the Enterpriser conference next year in April. I think it'll be it's going to be a wonderful show here, and I think it would be great to have you there. So we can touch base on that. But thank you again.
Sounds great.
It's been an incredible experience.
That sounds great.
And I appreciate you taking the time to come on our little show.
I appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me the time.
All right. Thanks, Deb. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. Be sure to subscribe to the Enterpriser podcast for new episodes every 2 weeks. And also, jump on to www.enterpriser.org to reserve a ticket to the Enterpriser conference next April.